Logan Lee,
Hey, Craig.
we both have made some great decisions in our lives. We are both married to wonderful women. I have a wonderful son.
Confirmed.
But the decisions for us to go on vacation last week might have been one of the best we've ever made. We
Picked a great time.
Logan was out of the country, so he was very disconnected.
Yep.
I was in Florida, so I was much less connected than normal. And boy, am I happy I was. I watched more than Logan did. Logan admittedly told me, and I'm sure he would tell you all, did not watch much of the Illini the last 3 games, that 3-game losing streak.
Yeah.
I did watch some, not all, but I did watch some. But man, am I glad that we were gone. First thing I told Logan when we hopped on backstage here, I was like, "You're not tan enough, man," and neither am I. I mean, I was only in Florida, and it wasn't like 80 degrees. It was like 65, 55, 65 most days. So I didn't get much sun. But Logan was in a tropical destination.
I was.
But are you happy to be back? How's South Bend? Nice and bright and sunny for you?
I mean, it was sunny today, and it was in the 50s. So, I mean, at least I didn't come back to 30 degrees and snowy. I mean, happy to be back to an extent. Definitely missed the warm weather. Had a great time. Had a great 6 days of sunshine and pool and seeing whales and
I saw that picture from Allison. That's awesome.
We have several good pictures. No, we had a great time. Happy that I missed one of the worst stretches of weeks, one of the worst weeks of basketball since I don't know, probably almost in the Brad Underwood era. I mean, I did watch the Michigan State game in full from a hotel room in near O'Hare, and went to bed pretty much right after that. So I didn't really dive into the discourse online. Did not see the Wisconsin game at all. Couldn't get the games there. Thought I was fortunate enough to be able to get the Duke game on my flight. Turned that off at halftime and decided to switch over to Guardians of the Galaxy as I finished my trek home. So yeah, I was very disconnected, and I'm very happy for it because I'm not sure I would have survived last week if I had to absorb nothing but Illinois basketball content for 7 days. So
Yeah, it was rough. It's so rough that I've already forgotten the order of events of what happened. Okay, so we'll start with tonight first. They right the ship. 20-point win over Iowa. This is one of the worst Iowa teams I've seen.
It's bad.
I remember when I covered the Big Ten tournament in New York City. Shoot, was that 2017 maybe? Illinois played Iowa in that first round of the Big Ten tournament. So both were, I think they were the 12 and 13 seeds in the Big Ten. So this is the worst Iowa team I've seen since then. And they're without their best player, their big man, Owen Freeman. They looked awful. They're bad. Illinois wins at 81-61. All five starters played outstanding. Thomas Lavavicic, Trey White, Kylan Boswell, Kasper Siakachonis, and Will Riley gets the start over Ben Humrickhouse. Didn't think Brad would do it. He did it. Benched the fifth year, or I guess not the fifth year yet. Benched the senior that has started the majority of games for Will Riley, and I think it paid off. 4 of the 5 were in double figures. Kasparis had 9, should have had 11, but he missed that layup late in the game. 7 rebounds for him, 7 for Will, 5 assists for Thomas Lavavicic, 7 assists for Kylan Boswell. I think my biggest takeaway, I have 2 takeaways. If Brad didn't realize today that at the moment he has 6 players he can reliably play, I don't know what else he needs to see. 5 starters and Dre are about the only ones that need more than 15 minutes on the floor right now. Once Merez comes back, if he comes back healthy, he will be thrown in there. But I think and I hope Brad saw it tonight. The 5 starters those are your guys. I don't think Davis brings enough to play more than 15 minutes. Humrickhouse is a shell of himself. He can come in and play 8 to 10, but he's not going to give you much anything else. So I think it's those 5 plus Dre getting the majority of the minutes for these last 2 games before you hit the Big Ten tournament. And that's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have been, I've been fine with Will coming off the bench most of this season. I think he's been a good 6-man type of player. I think that's a good role for him. But again, without really seeing a lot of the last week, just kind of hearing a few things here and there and seeing what I saw tonight, this is the rotation. This is the rotation you rock with for the rest of the season. We'll see what happens with Merez, as you said. The 5 starters played a majority of the minutes. Ben Humrickhouse scored the only 6 points off the bench. Illinois starters scored 75 points.
Yeah.
And Ben scored the other 6 on 2 threes. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. Obviously, you still need Ben and Jake. They're still going to get you minutes, but yes, as far as the lion's share of the distribution of minutes, I agree with you. I think we're to the point now where it's the 5 starters tonight and Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, who even tonight only played 13 minutes.
Yep.
Ben played one more minute than
well
he did.
either.
He didn't look particularly well, no. And I think he's been very spotty at times. I know there were, from what I had seen just based on social media the last week, I know there were some people I saw some comments about him not in a good light, and then the next thing I know, he's putting up 20 points or something against Wisconsin, and now everybody's like, he's the guy. I don't know that he's the guy, but he certainly is an integral part of this rotation from from now until whenever the end of the season is. Yeah, I mean, I think you play your 5 best players, and your 5 best players are Kylan, KJ, Will, Trey, and Tommy. Those are 5 best players.
Jeez.
Mom's home.
That even scared me. Yeah, exactly right. Mom's home. My other big takeaway is the turnover numbers.
Yeah.
5 for the game.
Yeah.
5 turnovers for the game. Will Riley had 3 himself. KJ had 1. Kylan had 1. If Illinois only turns the ball over 5 times, they're going to be hard to beat because turnovers and I guess the last week everything has been an issue. But I feel like even before the 3-game losing streak that was just abysmal, we were talking about turnovers. So if you only have 5 per game from here on out or 5-ish, this team's going to be hard to beat. They took care of the ball tonight, and I just felt I didn't feel like they put. Even though they won by 20, I still didn't feel like they played like their best.
No.
I think they just played okay. So I don't know what that says. But that was my biggest number 2 takeaway is the 5 turnovers.
Is Kasparis Yakashonis regressing? Or is he just not... Obviously, I know a lot of things have gone wrong the last week. I don't even know what sort of numbers he's put up the past 3 games. Haven't really.
He was one that actually looked decent at Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
He almost had a triple-double, I think.
I mean, I just know for, the longest
he had 14
time,
points.
He was the guy, and I just don't know that I've really seen that out of him.
He had 14.7 rebounds and 6 assists against Duke. So he played decent. The Wisconsin game, which that is the one I watched the least of while I was gone, he had 6 points, 5 rebounds, 7 turnovers. I don't know that he's regressing. I just think this is who he is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I said it after the first or second game. I said, there's some Andre Curbelo in him. Speaking of headlines, Curbelo. I was like, we're going to have some Andre Curbelo in this kid. And it's come to fruition. He's a better Curbelo. He's not the head case Andre was. But there are times, and we've said it on this postgame show multiple times. He has lost games because of his carelessness.
Yeah.
I'm not an NBA guy, so I don't follow draft much, but if he's a top 5 pick, it's fully on his
it's potential,
his frame and his body and what's his potential. He is like Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Cooper Flagg, Janai Broom, and I mean Broom's not going to go top 5 because he's like 25 years old, but they're all much better basketball players than him. But in 3 or 5 years, could Kasparis Yakashonis be an all-star? Probably, honestly. So I see that, but
yeah, that's what it is. I mean, early on he was having, he was putting up gaudy enough numbers where he was in, all Big Ten conversations and that type of stuff. And that's certainly out the window now. But all of that talk is, and Will too. I mean, Will's in some of those discussions as well. I don't know that he's lottery pick material. But both of them, I mean, you would be drafting them based on potential alone and what you're going to see 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road out of those players. I don't think anybody's going to draft either of them expecting them to be major contributors next season. They're both 18 years old, 19 years old. So
Will will be younger.
Yeah, and Will
is 18. He just turned 18.
Will's got to put on a lot of weight and strength and muscle and all that stuff. And KJ does a little bit too, but I mean KJ's a 6'6" point guard who sees the floor really well and passes really well. And he makes stupid mistakes and stupid passes, but again, he's a freshman. Like, he's young. Like, this is what we just you brought up the Curbelo thing, which is true. I agree with that. I think we both talked about that at the beginning of the season. But again, that just comes with being a freshman point guard. A really good freshman point guard, but a freshman point guard. Like, you're just going to get some of that. You're going to get those mistakes. And that's what we've seen out of him. But he can still fill up the stat sheet. He can still put up, gaudy triple double like numbers. Yeah, he only scored 9 points tonight, but still 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Yeah, I mean, I brought up the regressing thing. I don't. That's obviously a stretch, and I know I saw somebody comment, probably more tired than anything, which fair, maybe. I don't know how this season compares to what he's done in the past. And this whole team has gone through a lot this year, based just medically, physically. So I can't blame a guy for being a little exhausted by this point in the season. But he's a player that you're going to need more out of. Wherever this season goes, there's 2 more games left in the regular season, and then it's nothing but postseason play. And if this team has any hopes of making any sort of a run in either tournament, you're going to need more out of him. You really are. I mean, he is your best player. Tonight, Tommy was the guy because Iowa has no size. But Iowa shouldn't really have had an answer for KJ either. And he just, he still had his 9 points and 7 assists and almost had his 11 and all that. But I think you need to see a little bit more out of him. If you really have any hope of winning multiple games in either of these tournaments.
It all flipped the Michigan State game at Michigan State. It comes down to he just hasn't been shooting the ball well.
Well, he was hurt before then, right? He got hurt and then he came back because the Michigan State game he came back after missing 2 games, I think.
He missed. I forgot what game. USC and Penn State. He missed.
Yes.
Played against Iowa.
Yeah.
Or not Iowa. Played at Indiana. And then the Michigan State game happened. And since Indiana, he's not shot the 3 ball well. And before that, he was our best 3-point shooter. Which, that falls into the entire team's thing. There was something else I wanted to bring up. But I can't think of it right now. Let me check the chat real quick. It's a lot of Michael going over what coach is saying. Happy with the defense. Talks about being healthy, which I don't want to harp on Brad. I know I was critical of him after the MSG game. That's more like I don't want to make sure this gets out there. I have no problems with Brad. Like anyone that wants Brad fired is an idiot. That's not where we're at.
Yeah.
What needs to happen is either needs to switch his philosophy, change his philosophy, or needs to change the coaching staff. Something's got to happen. I have no ill will towards Brad.
I want to jump into this because again, haven't been watching as much, so I'm not nearly as tuned in on some of these things. But I have seen some of the discourse online. I have seen some people comment about how certain coaches need to be removed from the staff, and that's not what I'm to argue. But I'm pretty sure I've seen some comments out there on Twitter basically saying that that Tyler and Zach are essentially replacements for essentially replacements for like Chester.
Oh yeah,
that's not true. That's not their roles. Like a season ago, those weren't even technical assistant coaches. Like schools still have to, like Tyler Underwood is not getting paid nearly the amount of money that what Chester Frazier was. Like I haven't actually looked at those numbers, but like that's an obvious thing, right? Like do people are there people that really just assume that you're just going to go out there and get the 5 absolute best assistant coaches on the market? Like that's not how this works. Like you only have a certain amount of money that you're going to be able to give to coaches, and you're going to obviously you already have one of them that's making, heavy dollar amounts. Those 2 additional assistant coaches aren't going to be the most experienced guys. I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't be on the staff, or if you want to get into any of the nepotism stuff, whatever. That's not my point. My point is that those aren't the same type of you're not going to get the same type of people to fill those spots as you are, your other positions. Yes, changes need to be made on the coaching staff. I think that absolutely needs to happen. You brought back Orlando. Orlando is there to work with the bigs, and he's also mainly there to recruit. Jeff has really shown to prove his worth as a recruiter, especially internationally. Like, I don't think those two are going anywhere, but you need somebody on your staff that knows the X's and O's. And as you know, I know Tyler's done things with the offense and Zach's done things with the defense, and I'm not saying that they need to be replaced. I'm not saying that Quay Jones needs to be replaced, but like, you need somebody on your staff that can do those things. That's more about in-game adjustments, and that's just never been Brad's strength. It just never has been.
Yep.
Brad's been he's built this program back. Like, as you said, anybody that wants him gone is just, it's asinine. In my opinion, I just cannot even remotely get behind that. I can understand frustrations, everybody thinking this team should be super talented and should be better than what they, and I don't disagree. But again, this is a team largely of freshmen and inexperienced players who have played on really bad teams. You have one player that is on this team that had really significant minutes on a good Division One basketball team at all. End of list. Kylan Boswell. End of list. Like, that's it. So yes, I get it. By February 25th, you should be playing better with all the talent you have. You have 2 potential first-round draft picks. You have Tommy, who might be a first-round draft pick in another season or two. Like, there's enough talent on this team for those things to have been improved by now. But they're still young. They're still largely freshmen and inexperienced players. So changes need to be made, yes. But I just cannot at all even listen to the idea that Brad should be on the chopping block or on the hot seat or whatever. I think that's just nuts.
Logan kind of just went off there for a couple minutes.
Lots
to unpack here.
I was away, but I was still on Twitter, like, just sitting there, just, by the pool, just scrolling through the idiots on the internet. And
a couple things to break down from what you said.
Great.
You talked about salary. You can, public university, you can look
Correct.
up salaries.
You can. And I haven't looked that up since in the past few days.
Chester Frazier last year made $551,250.
How much did Tyler Underwood make?
Hold on. Man, there's a lot of Andersons. Tim Anderson made the same last year.
And that's what your main assistants are going to make. Orlando's making closer to $1 million.
Tyler Underwood last year made $115,000.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Tyler Underwood this year makes $120,750.
Correct.
So,
and
last
I don't know
year
that
was the first year you could have 5 assistants.
Yes.
And Brad promoted Tyler and Zach to assistants last year.
Correct.
Chester leaves. Antigua comes in. That's your straight up switch. Tim Anderson leaves right before the season, and you're not going to get a coach. So what they did was he just promoted someone that was on the staff in a smaller role.
Correct.
Just to give them an assistant coach role. That happened to be Quay. So, no, Zach, like you said, Zach and Tyler Underwood are not replacements for Chester and Tim Anderson. It's just not how it happened. Now, this offseason, do I expect Quay Jones to be an assistant next year? No, I don't. No. I think he'll go back to a role or he'll go somewhere else to be an assistant. And I would assume Brad would go out and try and get an X's and O's guy like Chester or Tim Anderson. Hey, Tim Anderson's still in Champaign. Maybe they work something out and Tim Anderson comes back. Who knows? I don't know. But that's the first thing. The money, and that's not how that works. And I already forgot what else you were talking about that I was going to touch on.
I went off on a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. You jumbled
remember.
like 6 points there that I wanted to discuss into one response. Yeah, but expanding on my tweet from the other day, I think my biggest issue with Tyler and Zach is that maybe it's just me thinking too much of this basketball program. Illinois is not a place to be your first assistant coaching job. Like, I feel like, and maybe it goes back to what you were just
Well,
saying
again,
about the
this
assistant
whole
money
thing is
pool.
new.
Yeah.
This whole additional, like those were video coordinator positions that all
Yep.
of a sudden we can now have 5 on-court assistants. So yeah, we're just gonna, for right now, we're gonna
Now,
promote. We're
and
only paying them $100,000 a year. Like,
it's unrealistic to have 4 assistants making $500,000.
correct. That's
Is
not
the point?
happening.
So yeah, I see what you're saying.
And
When I
but
guess
I don't know what other
yeah.
schools are doing. I don't know. I have to imagine that they're probably doing something similar, where those other 2 assistants are probably getting paid, something relatively similar, at least proportionally, to what Tyler and Zach are getting paid. Now, does that change over the course of time? Probably, yes. And I agree with you. I think that Illinois is a better program than that. But again, what are other schools doing? Who are the 4th and 5th assistants at Duke? Who are the 4th and 5th assistants at Kansas?
I was just
Are
looking
they
at
like
Michigan State.
experienced assistant coaches, or are they video coordinators that have been promoted because this all happened within the last 2 years? Like, that's the thing. That's what I don't know.
So if I can do this real quick, Michigan State has Doug Wojcik, who is a experienced assistant coach. Whoa, their website is hard to navigate, so this might take a while. Thomas Kelly is an assistant in his second year back with his alma mater after 4 seasons as an assistant at Western Michigan. So that's someone with experience. Sadie Washington is an older guy with a lot of experience. Sorry, this is riveting podcasting here. I'm sorry, but this is what I wanted to
We
look
can
up right
move
now.
on from this topic. I just thought it was something that we both talked about. And every school is probably going to do it.
It looks
differently.
like Michigan State's doing something similar. They had a guy he's in their 5th year with the team, but his first as an assistant coach. So I'm assuming it's similar. So yeah,
And I'm
that's
looking
where
at. I just went to Wisconsin's page. They don't even list a 5th assistant coach. They list 4 assists. They list a head coach, 3 assistants, and then other various staff. But there are only 4 people that have assistant coach titles. So I don't know. Every school might be
I just
doing
think
it differently.
the main thing is you have to replace that Tim Anderson hole.
Correct.
You got Antigua to replace Chester. You have to replace the Tim Anderson hole with someone with experience, preferably an X's and O's person that can come in a la Stephen Gentry, who was Brad's best assistant, lost him to Gonzaga years ago. But he was the X's and O's guy. Back to basketball. How about Trey White? This is a Trey White that we haven't seen in
I know
weeks.
Yes. I think we had written Trey White off about 3 weeks ago.
He didn't write back, though.
To what now? Got it.
He scored in single figures in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight games. His last double-digit performance was USC on January 11th, so more than a month. He also missed some games with sickness, but he scored 16 against Duke and now 14 tonight. So back-to-back good games from him. 2 of 4 from 3 as well. So to go along with, we talked about, I guess it was just all the starters in general. If your starters are playing like they played tonight, this team's going to be tough to beat. And I think that's what's so frustrating about this season is because we know this team's good. This team's so good. And they just, for some reason, it just hasn't worked. And it comes down to the threes. They still took too many tonight, I think. They shot 29 of them. They shot 30%. I think it was Brandon in here that had a comment. I don't know where he got this from. and I don't know if he's just joking, when this team shoots 30% from three, only lost one game this year. I don't know if that's true or not. Don't know where he got that from. But if that's the case, 30% is not tough to do. Like,
No.
national average is, I don't think many teams shoot less than 30% on the season. Illinois is shooting 31% on the season, and they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country.
Yeah.
So to shoot 30% is not hard to do.
Yeah, they've taken way too many 3-point shots, and I don't. That's if I'm gonna have any critique on Brad's season, it's the whole. I'm gonna keep letting them shoot threes because I know they can make them. That's a bunch of shit. I just like this team's just not that good of a 3-point shooting team. They're just not. Like you thought you had some guys that could do it, but that's clearly not been the case. But yet game after game after game. He lets them go out there and shoot 30 of them, and you're not good enough to shoot 33s. Like they just don't make them. Like sometimes you get hot and things can go well, and yeah, you can have your games where you do it, but I just I don't know. I just cannot fully grasp why we've allowed that to happen. Maybe he just think that's the best way this team's going to score points. I love watching Kylan and Dre drive, get to the basket. Like this team plays their best basketball when they're getting to the basket and not just chucking up threes from every which direction. It's been brutal. So yes, if they play like they do tonight, yeah, they're gonna win a few more games. Iowa's not very good. Iowa's not even a tournament team at this point. So like I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. The next two games are against two of the best teams in the conference who aren't exactly playing the best basketball. But yeah, I mean if they can put something like this together again, then there could be another win or two out there before we get to the tournament. But I wish they would just stop shooting 33s a game.
Yeah, and I know Brad keeps, telling them shoot it, and he's getting a lot of critique for bringing in people that can't make threes. But I'm going to go back a couple weeks ago, and we both tweeted the same thing. Joe Jackson on Twitter, at Joe Jackson CBB, tweeted out a graph of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 players, 14 Illinois transfers over the last 5 years. And he posted on the graph, he has their 3-point percentage before coming to Illinois, and then their 3-point percentage when they got to Illinois. Of the 14, 2 players improved their 3-point percentage when they got to Illinois. 12, their 3-point percentage got worse. Kylan Boswell's went from 38% to 23%. So of the 5 transfers that he has listed for this season, Kylan shot 38% last year. Ben shot 42% last year. Jake Davis shot 41% last year. Trey White shot 29%, and Kerry Booth shot 30%. So 3 of them were excellent 3-point shooters. Boswell went down to 23% this year. Hummerkaus was 34 at the point of posting February 6th, which is, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Hummerkaus was shooting 35%, and Davis was shooting 32%. So Brad's getting a bunch of crap for bringing in these bad shooters, but they weren't when they came here.
Right.
That's another disconnect where, he thought Hummerkaus was a sniper. Kylan Boswell, 38% is a great percentage from 3. He's obviously not hitting that now. So he didn't miss on these recruits here or these evaluations. He got guys that were making threes. They just got to Illinois, and that's where I think the assistant coach thing comes back into play, because something's not being relayed in practice, or they're messing with these guys' shots or something. The one thing I won't buy into is the Coach Fletch making them too strong. I don't think that's a legit thing. There might be something
Too yoked. Hashtag fire Fletch.
I don't think that's the reason these guys are missing threes, is because Coach Adam Fletcher
obviously
hasn't been
not the
good
reason,
of
but
shape.
it's the only logical theory I got. So hashtag fire Fletch. No,
Don't get that
obviously that's
started.
not true. Don't fire Adam Fletcher. But I mean, that's what happens when they come to Illinois. These guys get absolutely jacked and turn their bodies around, and they become these physical specimens. We've seen all the transformation pictures, so maybe they're just too yoked. Maybe they're just too yoked, and they lost their ability to shoot the three. I don't know. I don't have another explanation. That's all I got. It doesn't make a lot of sense why these guys come to Champaign and all of a sudden can't hit a three to save their life. But I agree. It's not like Brad's getting bad shooters.
Yeah.
Just something happens when they get to Champaign that they become worse shooters. And when you're trying to make 3-point shooting your entire offensive identity, it's going to lead to some struggles, which it certainly has this season.
Jay asking in here, did you guys catch the Illini flu bug as well the last 2 weeks? I don't know if he's referencing us not doing post games, but we talked about it at the beginning of the show. We were both on vacation, just happened to line up. We didn't plan to go on vacation at the same time. We were not on the same vacation. We were at different sides of the world. Logan was in a different country. But no, we did not catch the flu bug. We were just on vacation the last 2 weeks. Had things gone better, I might have hopped on. And I almost put my AirPods in and did like a Twitter Spaces after the Duke game just to let people vent and just to hear people talk. But I decided against that. I didn't want to do that out on the balcony listening to the waves roll in. I wanted to just sit there and listen to the waves roll in. Okay. Do you have anything else? We've been on here for 37 minutes.
No, I mean, I don't think we've ever said the words must win. And I think this was a must-win game for Illinois. At this point, they're in the tournament now. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that they would fall that hard, but they did. They fell really hard. But they still don't really have any bad losses. USC is the only bad loss this team has.
It's still quad 2.
Yeah,
it didn't fall into quad 3. Quad 2 losses are terrible.
No, but that's the worst loss they have, I guess is what I should have said. Yeah, I mean, this is still a team.
Can we revisit the question you asked me a couple of weeks ago? I don't think it matters at this point now.
Yeah.
If you could go back and take back one of the losses and switch it for a win this season,
I was surprised by your answer. I don't remember what your answer was now, but I was surprised by it.
What would yours be? Then I'll explain mine.
I have to look back at it. Hang on.
My answer's obviously changed. While you're looking that up, at the time, I don't know when Logan texted me this. It was before we left for vacation, so it's been 2 weeks ago. But Logan asked if you could. It was February 13th, so it was almost exactly 2 weeks ago. If you could have one win back for this season, what would it be? And my initial quick answer was the Maryland win.
You said Maryland, yes.
Loss.
I figured you would say USC.
I said a 21-point loss at home is something you can't have. That was my thinking. It was a 21-point loss on your home floor. Was my reasoning for that. I mean, I think now I know it's not a conference game, but anytime you have the worst loss margin of defeat ever, I think you want to take that one back. So I think it'd probably be the Duke game now.
Yeah.
But this is kind of a moot conversation because I don't think one game's would have flipped this season. But what would yours be?
I mean, when I asked you the question, I assumed you were going to say USC. And I was kind of up in the air at that time between USC and actually Tennessee. I felt like I understand where you're coming from with the Maryland point. But the Maryland game, that just felt like a really bad matchup. And I just don't know if there was a scenario. Was that the game? Who did we not have that game? Somebody was out that game.
Tommy.
Yeah. So that was a game that I think that was just a terrible matchup. That's why I would say Tennessee, honestly. Again, at this point, one game doesn't really make any bit of a difference, but that's one of the best 5 teams in the country, and you had them on the ropes at home. Like that's probably the game at that point that I would have said I would rather have back, or USC, one of those two. But yeah, at this point, just all of them. I'm just looking at like Ken Palm or bracketologist and just seeing all the green and the red. It's just upsetting to see all this green, and then you get to that USC game on January 11th, and it's just a freaking Christmas striped sweater, and I love Christmas, but it makes me so sad. Yeah.
Michael said Michigan State. Jay said Michigan State at home. You needed.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
that's it.
that one was tough. That one last Sunday or whatever day that was, Saturday night. That was a tough game to watch. I just
Yeah.
and I don't want to dive back into games that happened 2 weeks ago, but obviously we
Yeah.
haven't really talked about any of them since. That one was I was watching the game in a hotel, and Allison and I started having a conversation actually about Kasparis Shakashonis. And the next thing I notice, Illinois went from being up whatever 10 points to trailing, and then it never came back together. So that game was certainly frustrating. I don't understand. I don't have any idea what happened with the Duke game. That I watched the first half, saw them go 0 for 15 from 3, and I shut it off.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But tonight
Yeah.
was a must
I
win.
had
This is a game you needed to get, and you got it.
I had honestly forgot about the Michigan State. I mean, I knew they lost by double digits, but I had forgot that
The
there were
banner.
no points scored for the last 8 minutes and 29 seconds. Actually, there was negative 2 points scored the last 8 minutes and 29 seconds because they took 2 points off
Mm-hmm.
for the goaltend.
Mm-hmm.
The upside down banner. God, last week was awful.
I'm so glad I was out of the country.
Oh my God.
I was
Okay. Couple more points that have been brought up in the chat that I want to talk about. Jay says, tough to totally change your offense scheme when this team was supposed to be able to drain the threes and totally change your philosophy. This team will live and die by the three just the way this team is. See, I don't fully agree with that because we've
I don't either.
seen that this team can get into the paint. The Ohio State second half, they did great. The first half tonight, they started off great. They still shot too many threes, but they did get to the paint, and I thought that the game plan was less three heavy tonight. They still took too many, but they were less three heavy tonight. So I think this team can change. I just don't know that Brad fully will. I think he might tell him,
No.
"Hey, let's not take as many, but if you're open, still take them. But let's not force the threes."
No, I mostly disagree with Jay's comment, but I do get what he's saying and agree with him to a point, because that is, as we talked about, what this team was built to be.
Yeah.
And that's what that's what Brad brought them in to do. So there are certain players that don't really give you much other than being able to shoot the ball from distance. Like, that's all Ben Hummerkaus is going to give you. That's most of what Jake Davis is going to get you. Yes, you're going to get some hustle minutes, some hustle things from those guys, but that's their game. They're not really going to be the ones driving and all that stuff. It was a little different when you could stretch the floor a little bit and you had Morez down there. Now you don't have him, so your scheming is a little different. And you don't have like a Ty Rogers out there. Things are a little different. This team wants to play 5 out. That's just what they want to do, and that's going to lead to a lot of shooting. And teams have realized that Illinois is terrible at shooting the ball, so they're letting him shoot. One of these games it'll work, and they'll hit them, and it'll be fine. At this point, I just don't see the scheming changing all that much. I think it could. I think it should, but I don't know if it will.
Yeah. We haven't touched on it either, but I thought the defense was much better, and I was just reading some post game stuff from Brad and said that they did make some changes. Now that they're healthy and have everyone at practice, they're able to do some different things. So I did think the defense was really good. And then Mark did have one question. I haven't actually read this yet. Would you rather this player turn over year after year with Final Four potential, but also volatile, or have more 3 or 4 year guys who can get behind the long term with a Sweet 16 ceiling? So that's something I think we've kind of lost with this season, was that there was so much made of this team's talent and this being the year, but this roster was kind of built for next year.
2 years. I've been
Yes,
saying that all season.
even though your two best players, two of your 3 or 4 best players, and KJ and Will are likely gone after this year and one and done's, that's really gonna be it. Hummerkaus can come back. The way things are going, I don't know that I expect him to. But everyone else, like theoretically, he would be the only one out of eligibility, and he's not anymore because of the change. So theoretically,
Yes.
everyone could come back for next year. Is that going to happen? No. But I think that's something that we've kind of lost sight of, is that this roster wasn't built for this year, as much talent as they have. So
No,
I don't know what the right answer is to Mark's question, but I just wanted to throw that point out.
well, and I think this was kind of inevitable because of the team that they built last year. Last year's team was built for that season. That was an old basketball team.
Yep.
Your 5 or 6 main players were all 22 years old or older. You had a lot of 4th and 5th year guys on that team. Ty was the only sophomore or younger that really played significant minutes on that team last year. So of course you're going to have turnover. So you have to start over again from somewhere. I don't know that bringing in 5 or 6 third or fourth year guys who have never played together was going to be the answer either. I think when you put yourself in the situation, I would rather you bring in a group of younger guys who you can build for another 2 seasons or whatever. Because as you said, I think this team was really built for next year. Yes, you have some really talented players on the roster right now that you're probably not going to get back next season, but that's what they were building for. And that's, I would rather have more 3 or 4 year guys, but you can't do that every single season, especially with this new model of players leaving whenever the hell they want. And it's just free, fair game to do anything. We've had conversations, offline about, what this roster could look like next year, but the biggest factor is going to be NIL. It's going to be who you can afford to keep, and who's going to outbid for the talents of Marez Johnson or whoever, insert player here. Like that's where we're at right now. And until that changes, I don't know what's going to happen. I would love to sit here and say that all these players should come back. And I think a lot of them should come back, but will they? I have no idea. I have no clue.
I want to shout out Game Day Spirit here. Tweet of the night. I hope this works. I mean, Michael put it in the chat here. Buy the Terrence shirt. Talk about, making the most of a pretty shitty situation. I mean, everyone knows what happened. Everyone that's watching this knows what happened, so we don't have to talk about it. But I mean, selling the shirts and all the proceeds go to the Boys and Girls Club Champaign. Yeah, all the proceeds go to that. I mean, everyone in the NBA, because he's playing for the T-Wolves now. He's getting minutes.
Yeah,
and he's playing well. So everyone's doing interviews with him, and everyone's asking about it. And every time I get so frustrated when they say retirement, because it's not a retirement. But at this point, there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. But he's just been so positive about it and laughed it off. I mean, it's such an embarrassment for the program, but I wish it would just go away. But the way he's handled it has been fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's I think we should shut this down because it's after midnight. So the bad news is we don't know if we're going to do any more of these post-game shows. Logan is out this weekend. I might also be out this weekend. And then the next weekend, I will probably be unavailable for Purdue. And then it gets into the postseason where they could play at like noon and we'll both be at work. So it's kind of up in the air at this point if there's going to be any more post games this season. If there's not, we might try to go back to it. We haven't talked about this yet. I'm just spitballing here while Logan's on here. We might try to go back to just doing a regular kind of recap show when we're both available after the fact. But the live immediate post-game shows might be done for the year, depending on when the Big Ten Thanks, Mark. Depending on when the Big Ten tournament and NCAA tournament games are. Like Logan said, I do think this seals the NCAA bid. Not that it was in question really at all anyways, but at this point, I just want to avoid the 8-9 game. Either get up to a 7 or drop down to a 10 because I do not want anything to do with any of the 1 seeds this year. So, yeah, there's
Georgia
that.
just beat Florida. They're beatable.
Is Duke beatable? Is that? I guess Alabama probably is beatable. But
are they beatable? Yes. Will Illinois beat them? Probably not. No.
That's kind of what I was going back to. Is that this team's good enough to do it?
We've been saying that all
But
season long.
they won't.
This team is good enough to make a run, but they're also inconsistent enough where they may not make it out of the first round. So
I will say the last week, the 3-game losing streak, I was already leaning towards feeling this way. I've chalked it up as almost a lost season. Just make it to the tournament. Like, I don't expect a second weekend trip anymore. I just don't want to miss the tournament. Just get in the tournament. If you win a game, great. If you lose the first round, whatever. Like, this is a lost season. And I still think that way, even after tonight. So we'll see what happens. All right.
I think somebody didn't understand what peak by Cabo meant. I think somebody took it the wrong way because that was what we were supposed to be doing, and it was just the absolute opposite of that. So
Yeah.
they bottomed out by Cabo is what happened.
Yeah. Logan blacked out at Cabo.
Amen, brother. Amen, brother.
I think that's it. Like I said, if this is the last live post-game show, thanks for everyone for hopping in the chat. I know we've got some loyal people, so we really do appreciate you guys. I don't think we made our goal of 1,000 subscribers before the end of the season, but we are closer than we were before the season. We gained some.
Are we?
Yeah, barely.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks everyone for joining. We'll try and do more, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's kind of up to us. It's our show. But thank you for all the conversations, and we'll keep you updated. If there is one, turn on hit that little bell on YouTube, so you'll know when we do go live, and you can get in and talk to us. So for Logan, I'm Craig. We'll see you when we see you. Don't know when it's going to be.
Bye-bye.